This is by far the most challenging gig I've ever done, not because of the complexity, but because of the room. I'll show you. This is the room. It's a wedding hall. It's all hard floors and ceilings and glass everywhere, windows. There's a huge dome glass in the center of the ceiling. It's basically the worst conditions ever. If you were speaking to me face to face, I would have a really hard time understanding what you're saying because there's so much reverb in that room. What is good to the eyes is unfortunately the enemy of the ears. The seats were gonna be put sideways and the room is really big. It's 40 meters wide by about 20 meters deep. So here comes the question. How can I cover 1,000 people in such a large room and they are all sitting sideways? If they were sitting along the length of the room, I could have brought line arrays and throw very far, even though the ceiling is really low, so I can't get optimal coverage from line array, because for that huge distance, I would need to lift it up very high. So the next question would be, should I just put one speaker here, one here, and one there alongside of the width of the room? Now that will cause me a problem because there will be hot spots, very loud spots in front of the speaker, and then a dip in high energy, and then hotspot and then a dip. So depending on where you're sitting, you'll have a very different experience. So I thought, just like I do with the subwoofers, I don't spread them apart. I put them all in the middle together. I'm gonna apply the same philosophy for the left-right speakers. So let's assume I have a really wide angle speaker. I can just put two of them and cover the whole room, right? So that's what I did. This is the width of the room. This is the depth. So if I put two forward-facing speakers and then next to them, I put the same type of speaker, but turned outwards by 45 degrees or a little bit more, then I would basically have full coverage for the entire width of the room. Now this looks a little bit weird because this is not the same speaker model. These simulation speakers are much narrower than the ones that I was using. The ones I was using were 90 degrees spread. These are about 70 degrees. It doesn't matter. The idea is that I'm putting two speakers left, right, facing forward, and next to them, two other speakers facing outwards. But there's no distance between them. They are right next to each other as if they are one speaker. And this is important for low frequencies, because if I start to spread the speakers apart, it would start causing problems. So I'm considering it, the two are one speaker, but they are spreading the high frequencies very wide. And that's what I care about, because as you go down with the frequencies, they become more and more omnidirectional. And as you go up with the frequencies, they become more directional. So if there was a gap in the high frequency coverage, it would be very noticeable. And I also put just two 18-inch subs next to each other in the center so that I don't have very strong places of bass and very weak places of bass. When the subs are together in the center, they give a very even coverage throughout the room. So the response actually looked a little bit more like this. And I'll show you in real life. This is how it looked. You can see the speaker stands next to each other. One is facing forward, the other is facing to the side. Not completely 45 degrees or a bit more, because I don't want to create a gap in high frequencies between them. And the subs are in the center. And I have a lot of monitors. The band is really big. And I knew this was gonna be problematic, even though I keep my monitors very quiet. Surprise, surprise, plans got changed. They decided to put a low stage on the other side of the room, so I teared down everything and moved it to the other side. And because of that, I say thank goodness I didn't bring the arrays, otherwise I would not have been able to move them by myself. So now imagine there's a 12-person band and 1,000 people sitting in that room. If I clap in the room, just one person, it's really loud because of all the glass and the hard surfaces. Imagine 1,000 people clapping in that room and I need to get above them in volume. Now that's not the problem. I still have plenty of headroom. I can push the speakers a lot louder than I have set them, but the room itself is a problem because it behaves differently at different volumes. I'll get to that. But first I started taking measurements. So I took one in front of the left speaker, one in front of the other left on the extreme side, one in front of the right, one in front of the other right on the extreme side, and one in the center, and I averaged all of them and I got this. Then I EQ'd it and it looks like this with the correction. So that's the EQ on the speakers and you can see they are pretty low at -21. I still have plenty of headroom. Then I turned on my subs until the overall sound is at that part of the target trace. This bump was louder, so I just pulled it out a little bit with an EQ like so. So this blue trace is now the EQ'd subs. You can see right here I pulled out 60 Hz by 3 dB. Even if they are subs, don't be afraid to EQ some bass out of them to make them more flat. And that ended up being the response of all the speakers with the subs together in the room. Now, if you've been watching my videos with open sound meter, you should know this next thing I'm going to show you. So let's see the center measurement and the subs. If you look at the phase graph in the crossover region, you can see clearly that the yellow and the blue are not overlapping. So they are not in phase. I'll let you think a little bit. What could be the solution? Usually what we do is we delay one of them to be in phase. So if I'm delaying a lot, I have delayed them 7 milliseconds, and keep in mind they are on the same physical plane. So the subs are not in front of the mains or the mains in front of the subs. They are at the same distance. I'll reset the delay and try to guess what could be the problem. They seem to me like they are parallel lines that are far apart from each other. So that is a polarity inversion. So let me click on the polarity and boom. I can add a little bit of delay. And now it's perfectly overlapping. So when you have two parallel lines that are far from each other, it's probably a polarity inversion. If you are doing delay and the curve is kind of bending, but it's not overlapping throughout, the fix is not the delay. Because when the delay is the fix, the curves would be like this, close from one side and far from the other side. So you delay them and they come closer like this. But if they are from both sides far apart, it's usually a polarity inversion that would bring them together. Fortunately, I was able to give in-ear monitors or headphones to 3 of the musicians. So I only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stage monitors, which is still a lot, especially in a room like this, don't get me wrong, but it's better than 8 monitors. You can see how quiet they are. And something I always do in mixing station is I create an IDCA to control the mains and the subs all together with one fader, so I don't change the relationship between the loudness of the subs compared to the mains. In preparation for this gig, I used the mixing station scenes, not the native mixer scenes, because in mixing station I could prepare offline. I'll make a whole video about that, but basically I can patch everything and connect everything without having the mixer on. Because in a lot of situations we are waiting for electricity. So usually we set up everything, we plug all the cables, and then when electricity comes, we can turn things on. So it's really nice that I can, in mixing station, see how I laid out the scene and plug things in correctly without needing the mixer to be on. And for tuning, I was using the internal generator of the mixer, but I was not generating noise directly on the main left right. I was generating it on the last bus, and the last bus I called it noise, and I put it on the main left right and on the mono bus, so that it's a lot easier for me to mute and unmute and set levels without having to go in and out of the oscillator each time. And by the way, if you're using the internal oscillator, -18 on the meters is actually -24 on the sliders for pink noise. For white noise and sine wave, it's the same, -18. Just with pink noise, it's wrong. I'll make a video about it. During sound check, it was plenty loud. Then 1,000 people came in. They all started clapping and I couldn't hear the man speaking anymore. Because as I've mentioned, the room is really reverberant, so any physical noise is amplified a lot, especially clapping. So first instinct was to turn up the speakers because I already have my wireless mic almost all the way up. So I tried to do that, turning them up from -21 to about -18, which is just 3 dB, right? It started feeding back immediately. I pulled it back because, as I've mentioned, this room on different volumes, it behaves differently. So turning up the speakers was clearly not the solution. What else could I do to make things louder without actually making them louder? Using a limiter. So I put a limiter on the main left right and I turned it up 6 dB and I turned down the output gain ceiling to -3. So the meters on the main left right are going all the way up to -3. But I'm not crushing the mix. It's just, if you look at the reduction meter, it's just like a couple of dB to 3 dB at most. But what I'm doing is I'm bringing the overall level of the whole mix by 6 dB without actually turning up the speakers. Now, this is not without consequences, of course. If you make everything louder, the noise floor will get louder and some microphones will start feeding back when there's quiet. During the big sections of the songs, it's all fine, loud and clear, everybody is happy. But when they stop and it's all quiet, I have to pull back the microphone. So that's why I made an IDCA for the main microphones. I had 3 main microphones and 4 background vocals microphones. So I made an IDCA for the background vocals and an IDCA for the main vocals. So I wouldn't go searching for which fader is feeding back. I can just pull the IDCA or both of them at the same time. That would pull all the microphones down. So I wouldn't risk feedback. But they were also live streaming, so I gave them a bus feed. I linked bus 11 and 12 and sent everything at -5 dB so that I wouldn't clip the bus. Because I'm mixing so loud, and if you look like right here on the microphones, on the wireless mics, I'm adding on the compressor plus 7 dB of gain. And right here 6 dB, 5 dB. And also the ATEM video switcher has a very hot input. So previously I would be mixing and the meters look fine to me. They are not clipping, but it would be clipping on the ATEM. And I also put a limiter on the stream bus. I turned it up 5 dB because I turned all the channels down 5 dB. So that was just compensating. I'm not actually squeezing anything. And put the ceiling to -1. And then just in case, I sent pink noise to the ATEM switcher at -18 dB. And the switcher was actually reading -14. So we turned down the input of the ATEM switcher by 4 dB so that it matches the level that is coming from my mixer. Because I've had this happen to me previously, the video director was like, bro, it's clipping, and I'm looking at the meters and it's fine. So it turns out the ATEM has hot inputs. It's always a good idea to give the live stream a mix bus, not direct feed from the left right, because in case they need to make some changes, and even if they don't need to make some changes, because I want to send to them crowd mics, I want some ambience in the live stream, otherwise it sounds very dead and awkward. So I had some crowd mics, I placed them in between the speakers. You can see right here in the picture. These are the speakers. In between them, I put a mic right here and another one on the other side. And these are capturing the sound of the people. And these mics, I cut all the bass from them. I don't need any bass. I don't need anything below 200 Hertz. And I tend to compress them a fair bit. So I send them at 0 dB. And because it's a post-fader bus, the level of the crowd to the live stream would just be using the fader of the channel itself. And really important to remove it from the main left-right, because if you keep it, it will feed back, of course. So this channel is just going to the live stream. Now I had problems, even though I did tune my speakers and I took all my advice into consideration that I always give you, I took them myself. But when they are speaking on the mics, there is a very annoying low frequency like this. So even though I tuned the speakers, this problem was in the room, so it would still show up in the microphones. So what I did right here is I cut a lot. You can see the low cut is at 213. I would usually never go that high on any vocal microphone. Normally like 100 or maybe 140 would be extreme for me if it's like really bassy. But this room had horrible resonances. Even if I'm cutting at 140, 150, there's still a ton of annoying bass. So I ended up cutting a lot higher, above 200, and that made it intelligible. At least they can understand what the person is saying because there's so much reverb. It did sound thin, so it sounded a little bit like that without bass. But the important thing to me is that they actually understand what is being said. Keep in mind, bass and reverb are enemies. Even if your microphone is plenty loud, if there is too much bass and there is too much reverb at the same time, you cannot understand what the person is saying. It might even be harsh. You might boost so much high frequency that your ears are fried and still not be able to understand what the person is saying because of the problematic bass with the reverb in the room. So the solution is just to cut out that bass, even if it's gonna sound a little bit thin. And I went ahead and did this for the rest of the vocal microphones. You can see right here. So there are priorities. Even though you think it should sound a certain way, the most important thing, first of all, in live setting is to hear the vocals. In the past gig, somebody came to me and he was like, can you turn up the piano a little bit? It's not loud enough. I'm clearly hearing the piano. The problem with pianos is that if you turn it up too much to hear it, it becomes overwhelming. And if you turn it down to be balanced, it seems like you are not hearing it. But then if you mute it, you notice the difference. Pianos are really hard to mix. Point being is, I don't care about any instrument as long as I can hear the vocals clearly. People are happy. Second priority is if the vocals are already strong and loud, if they are not intelligible, if people are having hard time understanding what the person is saying, that's a problem. Cut all the low frequencies until you have understandable speech. Does it sound thin? Sure. But is it understandable? Yes. So you have to always keep in mind the priorities. If you can make it sound pretty, do that by all means, but don't be attached to your opinions. I never cut above 140 hertz on vocals. Well, in this case, you have to. Now with the bass guitar, I was having not problems, but sometimes, not the entire time, sometimes there would be some notes that would ring and would be really annoying. It could be because he's playing up the octave, but it's also probably because of the room, as I've mentioned so many times. So something useful that I could have done is a frequency sweep. Before I learned how to take measurements with pink noise, what I used to do is I would generate a sine wave and I would sweep the frequencies from low to high very slowly and see if there is any resonance that is way louder than the other frequency. And I stopped doing that with time. But in this scenario, it would have probably helped me identify this annoying frequency that didn't show up in the measurement. Oh, something else. I tried to use the de-esser, this one that I've made videos about in the past, and I still hate it. I gave it another chance and it gave me more reason to not use it at all. Because when you turn it on, even just a little bit, it's like not doing much. It's basically useless. Turn it up a little bit more, all of a sudden it's clamping like crazy on the high frequencies and it's actually really distracting. So because I cut so much low frequencies from the speaking mic, at some point it became a little bit harsh and I needed to tame that harshness. So I thought, you know, I'll just try the de-esser again. And I turned it up a little bit. It wasn't doing anything. Turned it up a little bit more. And all of a sudden I would get really hard clamps like the S. He would be speaking and it's very noticeable and very distracting the way it clamps down on the signal. So never use this plugin. There's no good way to use it. It's just really bad. Instead, you can use the combinator and just do a little bit of compression on the high frequencies. It's not perfect either, but at least you have a lot more control that you can tweak settings and not let it be very distracting like the de-esser. And sometimes maybe just find the high frequency that is really annoying and pull it back a little bit. In live sound, you can make things as complicated as you want and as simple as you want. I get it that in installed environments, you can tweak a lot of things and make things perfect and get plugins. But if you're just doing live sound gigs and going around places every time in a different place, the basics become really important. All that being said, although I was really stressed out and I was on my toes the entire time, literally I was standing on a chair so I can see the band the entire time, and if they needed something from me, I could know. I do this very often, especially when there's a lot of people. I get lost in the crowd, so I just put the plastic chair, stand on it and hold my tablet. The musicians were happy, at least the ones that talked to me personally. They did not complain. The organizers were happy. A few people told me that on the extreme left side of the room, the sound was a bit low. So I went around, walked to this side and to this side, and it was consistent. But maybe some people were sitting on the extreme left side towards the stairs where they are not supposed to be sitting. I don't know. And also when you have situations where this is the stage and people are wrapped around it like this, that's fine. But if they start sitting on the side of the stage right here and the speakers are like this, there's only so much you can do. I mean, I'm not going to point the speaker backward. If you're in a situation like that, use the limiter. You cannot turn up the speakers more because it will start feeding back. Use the limiter. It will also cause some feedback, but it's a lot more controllable because you're mixing into the limiter. So you can actually push things and make things louder overall, more impactful without actually being louder in terms of sound pressure level. Other thing is if the room has problems, even if you tune your speakers, these problems will still show up in the microphones. So you might also need to do some fixing on the individual channels. But this is only in extreme cases. In normal situations, outdoors or indoors, where it's not that crazy, usually just tuning the speakers will fix it and you wouldn't have to do any fixes on the individual channels. Keep your priorities in check. Vocals should be the loudest. That's what people care about. There's a ton of reverb and the speech is not understandable. Cut as much low frequency as you want to the point where you can understand what the person is saying, even if it sounds a little bit thin. If you found this video insightful, if you learned something new, if you liked it, make sure to hit the like button, click on the video on the screen right now, and I'll see you there.